I never expected to become a millionaire, and I didn't anticipate that I would suffer losses because that money. I'll start the story from the very beginning. I sometimes have a hard time believing how long my wife and I have been together. We have been married 24 years now, and in another month we will hit that 25-year mark. A full quarter of a century. Every time I think about that number, it hits me deeper than I expect. It honestly feels like it was only yesterday that I was walking around with a ring hidden in my pocket, sweating bullets while trying to figure out how to ask her to marry me without making a complete fool out of myself. And yet somehow here we are, with both of our kids grown up and out of the house, leaving everything feeling a lot larger and emptier than it used to. Owen and Nora are both in college these days. Owen is close to finishing his last year, and Nora has just wrapped up the beginning of her second. It is strange, having the silence that comes with them being gone. Our home used to be full of noise and movement. Owen would blast music from behind his door, and Nora was always butting heads with my wife, Sonia, about curfews and weekend plans. Their friends treated our place like a revolving door. Now it is mostly just Sonia and me rattling around in this quiet house, and on mornings like today, when she is out running errands, it is only me. I finally decided to drag myself out of bed. Sonia would probably shake her head if she saw me lying there like some old man who has already clocked out of life, even though the morning had barely started. I reached for my bottle of vitamins on the nightstand, popped the cap, and tried to shake one pill into my hand. Instead of landing in my palm, the little thing bounced off the table, dropped to the floor, and, naturally, rolled straight under the bed. I let out a long breath, muttered a couple of choice words, and dropped to my knees to fish it out. It was darker under the bed than I expected, and there was a dusty smell that made me think I should probably clean more often. I swept my hand around blindly, brushing over lint, dirt, and even an old sock that must have belonged to Owen before he took off for college. Then my fingers touched something else entirely. It felt thin and crinkled, nothing like anything that should have been there. I pulled it out into the light, and the second I saw what it was, my stomach dropped hard. It was a condom wrapper. For a moment, my brain just stopped working. I sat there on the floor holding it between my fingers like it was some strange piece of evidence I had never seen before. My first reaction was plain confusion. Who on earth could this belong to? We have not had company. No parties. No visits. It has only been Sonia and me in this house for months now. Then another thought hit me, one that felt like someone had tightened a fist around my chest. I had a vasectomy right after Nora was born. Sonia and I knew we were done at 2 kids, and I went through with the procedure without hesitation. So why would there be a condom wrapper hidden under our bed? That was when the thought I did not want to admit started creeping in. Sonia might be cheating on me. A wave of anger rushed up, sharp and hot, but I forced myself to keep it down. What was I going to do, charge at her waving the wrapper like it proved anything? She would deny everything. Or worse, twist it around on me somehow. No, I needed something more solid before I even thought about confronting her. I stood up, threw on some jeans and a shirt, and grabbed my keys. The house suddenly felt tight, like the walls themselves were accusing me of something. I needed air. I needed someone who could actually help me sort this out. So I headed to see an old friend of mine, the guy I have known for years who ended up becoming one of the best private investigators around. When I walked into his office, he was leaned back in his chair with his boots kicked up, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. He glanced up, gave me a big grin, and got to his feet to shake my hand. "Well, if it is not Liam Carter," he said, motioning for me to sit down. "What brings you in?" I had to swallow hard before I could talk, but once I started, everything spilled out, the condom wrapper, the uneasy feeling in my gut, the fear that something in my marriage had cracked without me noticing. Cal listened quietly, not interrupting once, just nodding here and there while his face stayed serious. When I finished, he leaned back and rubbed the stubble on his chin. "All right, Liam. I will help you. Give me about a week, and I will see what I can find." But before we go any deeper into this, you need to think ahead. If this turns out to be what you suspect, you should talk to a lawyer. Get a sense of what you are up against, financially and everything else, if things go as far as divorce. Hearing that made my stomach twist, but I knew he was not wrong. Yeah, I said quietly. I will do that. Cal stood up and clapped my shoulder. We will figure this out, Liam. I promise you that. I thanked him and headed out, feeling the empty wrapper weighing down my pocket like a stone. About 2 hours later, I found myself sitting in the office of Axel Grant, the best divorce attorney in town, at least according to every angry husband I had ever talked to. Axel was leaning back in his chair, giving me a look that made me feel like I was being studied. People called him a shark for a reason. After I told him everything, he jotted down some notes and finally looked at me. Liam, if this goes the way you think it might, you are looking at losing half of everything. Savings, assets, the house, California splits things right down the middle. 50%. Hearing that felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Half of everything Sonia and I had built. But deep down, one thing was absolutely clear to me: I could lose money, property, whatever, but I could not stay married to someone who betrayed me. Axel must have seen that in my face because he leaned forward and lowered his voice. If you are serious about moving forward, then my advice is simple. Keep your head down and act normal. Do not tip her off. If she figures out you suspect something, she will hire her own lawyer, and then things will get a whole lot uglier. I nodded slowly. I will try. I left his office drained but steadier than before. I had to hold myself together, even if I felt like I was falling apart inside. When I got home, Sonia was standing at the counter chopping vegetables for dinner. She turned and gave me a smile, calm, relaxed, exactly like the woman I had lived with for decades. That look twisted something inside me, but I forced myself to smile back. I have a business trip tomorrow, I said, trying to sound casual while I leaned against the kitchen counter like nothing was wrong. I will be out all week. Sonia nodded without looking suspicious, and that was almost worse. That night, when she crawled into bed, she pressed her hand against my arm and eased herself closer the way she had done for years. I could feel the warmth of her body sliding toward me, and I knew exactly what she was wanting before she even whispered. Come here, she murmured, soft and familiar. But I could not bring myself to move. I am tired, I muttered flatly, staring at the wall. She hesitated, then let out a small sigh and turned away from me. I lay there staring at the ceiling while a storm of questions gnawed at the inside of my skull. Was I jumping to the wrong conclusion? Could that wrapper have belonged to Owen? He had stayed in our room for a couple of nights before heading off to college when his room was getting painted. Maybe the thing had fallen out of his pocket. Maybe I was trying too hard to convince myself that everything was fine. But then again, what if it really was what I feared? What if Sonia was actually stepping out on me? The doubt churned inside me until my chest felt tight. But I knew one thing for certain: I had already gone too far to turn back now. If this was a mistake, I needed to know it. And if it was not, well, then I needed the truth more than ever. The next morning, before the sun had climbed over the rooftops, I got dressed, packed a small bag, and called a cab. Sonia barely moved as I slipped out of the room. Her soft breathing was the only sound in the house as I pulled the door shut behind me. The city faded behind me as the driver headed toward the edge of town, where the buildings thinned out and the roads opened up. The motel I had chosen was exactly what I expected: cheap, forgettable, and private. Exactly what Cal and I needed for this mess. After checking in, I tossed my bag on the bed and sat down. The wallpaper was peeling in thin strips, and the room smelled faintly like old carpet cleaner, but none of that mattered. I just stared blankly at the wall as the hours dragged painfully by. Almost evening, my phone buzzed. Cal's name appeared on the screen. Liam, he said the moment I answered, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Sonia just walked out of the house. She checked into a motel. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Which motel? There was a pause, just a second, but long enough to make me sweat. The same one you are in. I sat frozen, my hand tight around the phone, listening to the dead silence of my room pressing in on me like the air had thickened. When Cal called back a few minutes later, his voice had shifted, calm, yes, but sharp enough to cut through the pounding in my ears. She is in the room right next to yours, he said quietly. Listen to me, Liam. Do not confront her right now. Do not do it. Leave the room, go cool off somewhere. This is not the time. But I was past reason. No, Cal, I said, my voice thin and strained. I need to know. I need to hear it with my own ears. He let out a heavy sigh, the kind that told me he knew arguing with me was pointless. Fine. But do not do anything stupid. Promise me that, Liam. I muttered something that probably counted as a promise, though my hands were shaking too badly to think straight. After I hung up, the minutes stretched out like someone was pulling time itself thin. Every second hurt. And then it happened. Voices filtered through the wall, first muffled, then clearer. I recognized Sonia's voice instantly. A man's voice followed, deeper and rougher. Then the noises shifted. It became obvious what they were doing. Sonia's voice rose, unmistakably caught up in the middle of it, and then the words that followed twisted something inside me until I could barely breathe. I do not know why you still stay with him, the man said, his tone or dripping with contempt. He is old. Washed up. He cannot satisfy you, can he? Sonia's reply came between breaths, words I never imagined I would hear from her. No, he cannot, she said. You are the best I have had in a long time. He is just so old now. The man let out a low, cruel laugh. Then why stick around with him? Her answer came without a moment of hesitation. I need him to keep the bills paid. Now stop talking and keep doing what you are good at. Something inside me gave way. I sat on the bed, stiff and shaking, every muscle ready to snap. Their laughter and moans seeped through the walls like acid until I could not take another second. I stood up, fists clenched, fully ready to storm through the adjoining door and end the entire nightmare with my bare hands. But before I could move, my door burst open. Cal walked in fast, his face carved into a grim look I had never seen on him before. He grabbed my arm with both hands, holding me still. Do not, he barked. Not like this. Let go of me, I hissed, pulling against him, but his grip only tightened. Listen, Liam, he said firmly, locking eyes with me. They left the window open. I have my camera rolling. I am recording everything. You are going to have all the evidence you need. If you charge in there right now, you will be the one hauled off in handcuffs, and that will ruin you when the divorce hits. My breathing came heavy and uneven. My vision blurred with rage. I do not care about the divorce, I growled. I want to make them pay. Cal stepped closer, steady as a wall. And you will, he said, his tone hard as steel. But not by throwing your life away today. Think, Liam. You lose control now, and you lose everything. For a moment, I fought against him, all that fury pushing at every part of me. But Cal was stronger, and his words cut right through the madness in my head. Slowly, the anger drained out, leaving behind something far heavier, grief that almost buckled my knees. I sank down onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. I felt small, broken. The woman I had loved for most of my life was in the next room, tearing our marriage to pieces. After a long stretch of silence, I forced myself to my feet again. My jaw clenched, my hands trembling. I will get my revenge, I said quietly, every word burning inside me. She might take half of what I own, but I will make her feel what she has done to me. When Cal finally left the room, the walls seemed to close in around me. I sat there with only the dim motel lamp and the pounding in my head. My whole body felt weighed down, like I was carrying a 100-pound pack on my shoulders. The plan was simple: stay away for 3 days while Cal kept watch on Sonia. That was the deal. But sitting there alone, knowing what was happening, was its own kind of torment. By the time he called again that night, I was pacing the floor like a caged animal, replaying Sonia's words again and again until they felt carved into my skull. They left the motel, Cal said, his voice calm and steady, the way someone talks to keep another person from falling apart. I finally got a confirmation on the guy. His name is Harlan Pierce. Works with her. Hearing Davy say it froze me for a second. My throat tightened up, and I had to swallow before I could even think straight. Harlan Pierce. The name itself meant nothing, but the fact that she was spending her time with someone from the office hit harder than I wanted to admit. All those evenings she insisted she was tied up with work, suddenly they had a new meaning. I'll keep eyes on her, he continued, speaking in that calm, detached way he used when he needed me level-headed. For now, stay put. We talked about this. No sudden moves until we've gathered everything. I barely managed a response before I ended the call. The hours that followed dragged on like years. Every tick of the clock jabbed at me, reminding me what she was doing and who she was doing it with. The next day he called again. His updates were short, almost clinical, but each one punched a little harder than the last. She's been going over to Harlan's place. Same pattern. After work. Staying late. I've got enough footage to establish a clear timeline. I didn't say a word. I just held the phone tight enough that my fingers hurt. Then he added, voice still even but slower, like he was stepping carefully, Liam, she's sleeping with him every day. At his house. Before heading home, I met both Axel and Davy in Axel's office. The blinds were shut, the room dim, the smell of old leather and stale coffee hanging in the air. Axel lounged back in his chair with his hands together under his chin. Davy stood by the window, arms folded. We stick to the plan, Axel said, his tone steady and unyielding. Liam, you go home and keep everything calm. Don't let her sense any shift. What Davy's got is already strong, but the longer we play this carefully, the better your position becomes. Davy nodded. You've got to keep it together. Nothing out of character. Let her believe life is normal. I'll keep tracking her in case she changes her pattern. I felt a knot twist inside me, but I forced my voice to stay even. I get it. I'll manage. Good, Axel said, leaning forward. His eyes locked onto mine. If you lose your temper, you lose control. Remember that every minute you're under that roof. We went over the remaining details, and by the time I walked out, it felt like the weight of the next week was already pressing on my chest. When I got home, Sonia was in the kitchen. Her face lit up the moment she saw me. Oh, you're back. She said, moving closer like she was about to put her arms around me. I took a step back, lifting a hand. Hold on. Someone at work tested positive for COVID. I'm feeling off, and I don't want to put you at risk. Her expression switched to immediate worry. Are you feeling sick? Do you have a fever? Just a sore throat, I lied smoothly. But I should stay in the guest room for a couple of days. Better to be cautious. She nodded quickly. Of course. Tell me if you need anything. I'll make tea, soup, whatever helps. Thanks, I said, pretending a tired smile. I'll be fine. After a few seconds, she asked, should we cancel the anniversary party? It's coming up. I shook my head. No. No need. I'll be good by then. While I'm isolating, I'll start planning the arrangements. She smiled at that, soft, almost relieved. I kept my own face neutral. Later, in the quiet of the guest room, my phone buzzed. Davy again. She left the office around lunchtime, he reported. She's back at Harlan's. Same routine. My jaw locked so tight it hurt, but I didn't interrupt. I just sent you the photos and video clips, he said. They should be in your inbox. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening the email. The evidence sat there, images and footage that took away any possibility of denial. Sonia stepping into Harlan's house. Their bodies intertwined in ways I didn't want to see but forced myself to watch anyway. My stomach churned. After a long moment, I finally said, with a coldness I barely recognized as my own, if I weren't married to her, I'd probably enjoy these videos. But right now, she just disgusts me. Davy hesitated before responding. I know this is brutal, Liam. But we're close. Those 7 days in isolation dragged on endlessly. Sonia floated through the house as if nothing was out of place. She didn't suspect a thing. When it was time to rejoin her, I forced myself to act like I was recovering. She tried to hug me, even leaned in like she wanted to pick up where we'd left off. I held her at arm's length. I'm still wiped out, I said quietly. I'm not up for anything tonight. Her brow creased with concern. You need rest. Don't push yourself. I won't. But tomorrow I want a full STD panel run. My voice stayed plain, factual. I needed to know exactly what situation she might have put me in. The clinic visit was quick. I kept my mind from running wild with possibilities, but the anxiety simmered nonetheless. Back home, I started sending out the invitations. Family, friends, everyone. The anniversary party was happening. I would make sure of it. That afternoon the kids called, confirming they'd be there. Hearing their voices gave me a brief, faint sense of warmth, but it faded as quickly as it came. Later, Sonia approached me with a softness I hadn't seen from her in a long time. I love you, Liam, she said, sounding genuinely sincere. I'm grateful for you. I gave her a small, practiced smile. I know. 7 days passed. Then the day arrived, our anniversary celebration. The house filled with people, voices carrying through the hallways, laughter bouncing off every surface. Guests told me how fortunate I was, how beautiful the years had been. They had no idea. Sonia looked stunning that night, glowing the way she always did whenever people were around, wearing that bright smile that made her seem almost childlike in how eager she was to please. She had gathered a handful of her co-workers for the celebration, and naturally Harlan showed up with his wife in tow. I kept catching the two of them trading quick looks, the sort of glances people think no one notices. Meanwhile, Sonia kept herself practically welded to my side, clinging to me as Harlan hovered just close enough to listen in while pretending he was wrapped up in small talk with someone else. I had not invited a single person from my own office. I could have, sure, but I did not want any of them there, not with this performance unfolding around me. Sonia questioned it for a moment, wondering why none of my colleagues had shown up, but I had rehearsed my answer days in advance. I told her they were stuck in a mandatory meeting, saying it calmly and smoothly so she would not have any reason to press further. It was not exactly a lie, more like stretching the truth into something convenient. Either way, I needed my coworkers as far away from this night as possible. Her parents arrived shortly afterward, stepping in with a flood of congratulations and kind words. I managed to smile and thank them, doing my best to keep my expression steady, but inside I felt like I was holding back a dam about to burst. They had no idea what was really going on. They had no clue about what I had discovered. Sonia, on the other hand, draped herself over me the whole evening, looping her arm through mine and greeting everyone with that same well-practiced cheerfulness she used whenever she wanted the world to see something perfect. She was determined to show everyone how flawless life was for us, how flawless we were together. And all I could think about was the weight of the lie I was still carrying, and how much longer I would be able to hold it steady without breaking. By then the night was buzzing, people chatting, laughing, patting us on the back. Everything seemed so polished that it felt almost unreal. I kept reminding myself that this polished calm was only the quiet moment right before everything unraveled. Then Cal and Axel walked in, and the air around me changed instantly. I had been waiting for that exact moment. This was where the carefully laid plan I had spent weeks building would finally unfold. Every step had been mapped out, every detail rehearsed. Now it was simply time to pull the trigger. I gently asked Sonia to let go of my hand. Her touch, warm and constant, only reminded me of everything I had swallowed down over the years. She did not question it. She just smiled and floated off to greet another cluster of guests, completely unaware of what the night was about to become. I made my way toward the oversized screen we had set up for the event, and just as I reached the front, the lights dimmed. Suddenly I was standing there, illuminated and visible to everyone. My pulse thudded hard, but I forced myself to stay steady. I grabbed the microphone, cleared my throat, and pushed through the storm building inside me. I told them I was grateful they had all come, my voice firm in a way that probably surprised a few people. I said that every person in the room mattered deeply to both me and Sonia. People murmured politely, smiling the way guests do when they expect a predictable, pleasant announcement. Then I said I had been married to Sonia for 24 years and 6 months. Sonia tried to slip in beside me, leaning close and whispering urgently that it had been 25 years. I gave her a small, soft smile and told her I would explain. Then I looked over at Cal, who was standing with the large, carefully wrapped, portrait-sized package I had entrusted to him. I called out to him and asked him to bring the gift forward and present it to my wife. Sonia stepped closer, still smiling, and her parents joined her. She had no idea what she was about to see. Her father helped peel away the wrapping, and I could feel the tension in the room stretched tight like a wire. Those seconds dragged on forever. The look on Sonia's face when the picture came into view was exactly what I had expected, a mix of shock, horror, and recognition. Even knowing it was coming did not make it easier for me to watch. The image showed Sonia straddling Harlan, the two of them having sex, frozen in a moment I could never erase from my mind. She let out a scream, sharp enough to cut through every conversation in the room. Her father's reaction arrived right on cue, anger, disbelief, fury spilling out of him at once. He barked at me, demanding to know what kind of sick joke this was, his voice so loud that it almost swallowed the churn of emotion rising inside me. I glanced at him, trying to keep my voice steady despite the heat of rage building in my chest, and told him plainly that it was not a joke. The picture was only a clearer shot from the video I was about to show. And then it began. Cal moved to the console, and I heard the few clicks before the screen lit up with the footage. Sonia on top of Harlan. Sonia's voice filling the room with those ugly, unforgettable words, "I am keeping him just to keep the bills rolling." The first time I heard those words, they destroyed me. Tonight, they barely stung. I had already bled out from that wound long before this moment. The room fell silent. Not quiet, silent. Heavy. Suffocating. Everyone stared at me, but I held my ground. Then a man dressed in a black suit appeared. His calmness, almost eerie in the chaos, made the scene feel unreal. He approached Sonia without even acknowledging her trembling or her tears, and handed her a manila envelope. He spoke just one sentence, clipped and professional, "Mrs. Carter, you have been served." Sonia froze. She reached for the envelope, but she did not open it. Her eyes jumped between the man and me, confusion twisting into anger and disbelief. She tried to speak but could not force any words out. The man moved past her without hesitation and walked straight to Harlan, who stood stiff as a board. He handed Harlan another envelope and said the same thing, "Mr. Pierce, you have been served." Harlan stared at the envelope as if it might explode in his hands, then looked at Sonia, panicked and unsure of what to do. But the man was not finished. He walked across the room toward the chief executive officer. The room seemed to shrink around him, the guests parting as he approached. He handed over the next envelope and repeated the line one more time, "Mr. Aldridge, you have been served." The chief executive officer, someone I had once admired, took the envelope with a confused, fearful expression. He stammered, asking what this was all about, his voice trembling. The man did not answer. He simply turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind nothing but shock and silence. I looked directly at the chief executive officer and spoke slowly, making sure every word hit home. I told him that the envelope he had been given contained a lawsuit. A lawsuit for failing to enforce the company's morality code. I looked straight at the chief executive officer and told him plainly that his employees had not been out to lunch the way he thought. They had been sneaking home to fool around and break the company's own morality rules. That line dropped into the room like a brick. No one said a word. Everyone was still trying to make sense of what they had just seen and heard. I noticed the chief executive officer's face twist with confusion and disappointment, maybe even anger, but I felt nothing for him. He had played his own quiet role in this mess by looking the other way for far too long. Then I faced Harlan, this man who had stomped all over my trust and helped burn my marriage to the ground. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Mr. Pierce, you have been served for alienation of affection and for tearing apart my marriage." My voice echoed off the walls, bouncing around the room like a cold wind. I saw people flinch at the force of the accusation. But then my eyes drifted back to Sonia. My throat tightened, but I would not let myself break. She was the one who had cut the deepest, the one who had chosen this path and dragged me with her into the wreckage. "And Sonia," I said slowly, "you have just been served with divorce papers." Her eyes went wide as if I had slapped her, her mouth trembling while she tried to swallow whatever was rising inside her. But I was not anywhere close to finished. I told the room that earlier I had mentioned our marriage lasting 24 years and 6 months, and that it was technically true. But the truth underneath was harsher. The real marriage, the one built on trust, had died the moment she chose to sleep with Harlan. Saying it out loud left a bitter taste, but it was the truth I had been choking on for months. I added that our investigation had uncovered exactly when it began, 6 months earlier. Sonia's face darkened, twisting with guilt one second and anger the next, but I refused to care. She had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I stared straight at her and said, with a voice that had no softness left in it, "I do not care why you did it. I do not need explanations. Just get out of my house." And right then, something clicked inside me, a feeling like a lock finally turning. It was over. The days after that scene stretched out like a long, exhausting waiting period, but the chaos did not settle. Sonia's parents were relentless. They called constantly. They dropped by uninvited. They tried every angle they could think of to get me to back off what they believed was a reckless choice. Her mother pleaded with me, her voice full of concern. "Liam, you do not understand. Sonia is going through something. You two have been together for so long. You can fix this." Her father, a man who usually kept his sentences short and to the point, stepped in with a more forceful argument. "You cannot just throw away 24 years. Think of the family. Think of everything the two of you have built." But my decision was already cemented in stone. Nothing they said could reach me. The betrayal had gone too deep. There was no road back. I did not need sympathy, and I did not want advice. Sonia had been given many opportunities to be honest, and each time she had chosen lies and secrecy. The bridge had burned all the way through. Still, Sonia did not stop trying. When the truth itself was not enough to sway me, she tried to come up with a new explanation, one so strange it actually stunned me. During the hearing, she looked at me with watery eyes and the kind of expression meant to stir guilt. "Liam, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I have been going through a lot. I have a hormone imbalance, and it made me want more sex. You could not keep up. That is why I needed more. That is why her voice trailed off, hanging in the air like smoke. I stared at her, wondering how she could possibly expect me to believe that after everything. I glanced toward Axel, my lawyer, and saw the disbelief written all over his face. He stepped in right away. "Ms. Carter, you never informed my client about any hormone imbalance. There are no medical records or physician reports to support this claim." Sonia recoiled as though the words themselves had smacked her. She dropped her gaze, clearly realizing that her story was falling apart. The judge, who had been quietly observing, finally leaned forward with a stern expression. "Ms. Carter," he said, "if this was a legitimate medical issue, why did you not inform your husband? Why did you not address the matter properly, especially if it was impacting the marriage so seriously?" Sonia sat silent for a moment, her frustration simmering just below the surface. The judge continued without giving her any room to regroup. "If such an issue truly existed, you should have communicated it to your husband. And at this point, we see no credible evidence. Therefore, the court finds no grounds for reconciliation." When the dust settled, I knew my side of the story had been laid out clearly, and there was no going back. I had stopped trying to untangle Sonia's choices a long time ago. After 7 long months of hearings and paperwork, the judge finally delivered the final word: the marriage was officially dissolved. That ruling closed the legal chapter, but the fallout kept spreading long after the ink dried. My children, Owen and Nora, ended up caught right in the middle of the wreckage. They refused to pick a side, yet their silence spoke louder than anything they could have said. They were furious with their mother for what she had done, but they were also upset with me for exposing it the way I did. And honestly, I could not fault them. I had dragged our private pain out into the open, ripped apart the image of our family in front of everyone. In my mind, I had done what needed to be done, but I understood that the way I handled it wounded them deeply. They pulled back from both of us. No calls. No messages. No visits. As much as it tore me apart, I respected their distance. It was their way of processing everything that had collapsed around them. I backed off, giving them all the room they needed, even though it left an empty feeling inside me that nothing could fix. Financially, the divorce took its toll as well. Everything I had earned through decades of work was halved. Watching my assets split down the middle stung more than I expected. Still, I did not regret it. Sonia walked away with her portion, but I walked away with something I considered worth far more: my dignity. My sense of self. I had held on to those, and no judge could divide them. Harlan, on the other hand, was in his own freefall. His wife had hired Axel to handle their divorce, and I knew Axel well enough to know that Harlan was in for a brutal fight. The man who helped wreck my marriage was watching his own crumble, and there was going to be a price tag attached to it that he was not prepared for. The chief executive officer, meanwhile, had one priority: making the entire scandal disappear before it ruined the company. It did not take long before he reached out to me behind closed doors, asking for a private meeting. He laid a simple deal on the table: $1 million if I backed off and dropped my lawsuit. They wanted to shut the door on this nightmare without a public trial. They needed silence, and I was the only one who could give it to them. At that point, I was done chasing revenge. The divorce had happened, I had exposed the truth, and I had no desire to drag things out any further. I accepted the offer. Walking away with that money felt less like a bribe and more like a settlement for everything I had endured. I withdrew the case and closed that chapter. I still keep that million, not just in a bank account, but as a reminder of the choice I made to finally end the war. If you want more stories that spark your imagination, subscribe to the channel and come back for the next chapter. There's always another tale waiting.